I'm 98 years old. 98 winters. 98 summers. I've watched the world change in ways I never could have imagined as a young man. I've seen men walk on the moon, factories shut down, neighborhoods rise and fall, and families drift apart over things that once would have seemed small. And after nearly a century of living, loving, losing, and learning, there's one truth I'm no longer afraid to say out loud. You probably didn't marry the right person. And that's not a failure. That's the beginning of real love. I know that sounds almost un-American. We grow up on movies about soulmates. We're told there's one perfect person out there. Your best friend, your confidant, your business partner, your adventure buddy, your therapist, your romantic hero or heroine, all wrapped into one flawless human being. We're told that if you choose correctly, marriage should feel natural, effortless, easy. But I'm here to tell you something different. I was 26 years old when I married Margaret. It was in a small brick church just outside Columbus, Ohio. Late August. The heat hung in the air like a heavy blanket. Cicadas were singing outside. My suit stuck to my back, and my hands were sweating so badly I thought I might drop the ring. But when she walked down that aisle, none of that mattered. She wasn't glamorous. She wasn't flashy. She was steady, strong, certain. And I remember thinking, this is the woman I'm going to build a life with. I married her believing that love meant we'd always understand each other. That if we cared enough, conflict would be rare and short-lived. I was wrong. The first few years were full of plans. We talked about buying a house with a porch, about raising 2 kids, about taking a road trip out west someday. I worked long shifts at a manufacturing plant. My hands were rough, my shoulders sore, but I felt proud. I felt responsible. Margaret worked too. She balanced budgets better than I ever could. She paid attention to details. She remembered birthdays. She saw things I missed. But somewhere between the second year and the fourth, something shifted. Not dramatically, quietly. I would come home exhausted and sit in silence. She wanted conversation. She wanted connection. I thought providing was love. She thought listening was love. We were both trying, but we were trying in different languages. We didn't scream at each other. We didn't threaten divorce. We just slowly misunderstood one another. And late at night, staring at the ceiling, I started wondering something I was ashamed to admit. Did I marry the wrong woman? Nobody talks about that part. Nobody posts that on social media. But doubt creeps in quietly. It doesn't kick down the door. It slips through the cracks. I was 29 when I finally said it out loud to my Uncle Ray. He had been married for over 4 decades. I told him Margaret and I were different. That maybe we weren't compatible. That maybe I'd rushed into it. He didn't scold me. He laughed softly. "Son," he said, "nobody marries the finished version of a person. You marry who they are right now. The rest of it, that's built over time." I didn't understand him then, but I do now, because Margaret changed, and so did I. Margaret at 28 was fiery, opinionated, full of plans. Margaret at 40 was tired but determined, juggling work and 2 kids. Margaret at 58 was calmer, wiser, more patient than I deserved. Margaret at 76, when her health began to decline, showed a courage that humbled me. And me, at 26, I was stubborn and proud. At 41, I was anxious about layoffs and money. At 54, after my father died, I grew quieter. At 63, after my own surgery, I was vulnerable in ways I didn't know how to admit. At 81, when the doctor mentioned cancer for the first time, I felt fear like a cold wind straight through my chest. If the young man who married her at 26 had met the woman she became at 60, I'm not sure he would have recognized her. And if she had met the older, slower, more reflective version of me back then, she might not have chosen me either. But here's what matters. We didn't need to keep choosing the same people. We needed to keep choosing each other. Marriage isn't about freezing two people in time. It's about walking forward together as you both change. There were years when I didn't feel fireworks. There were seasons when I felt irritation more than romance. Times when her stubbornness drove me crazy. Times when my silence hurt her. But I made a decision, sometimes daily, sometimes hourly, that our life together was worth more than my temporary frustration. The things that annoyed me in my 30s became the things I admired in my 60s. Her insistence on talking things through, that became emotional strength. Her careful budgeting, that saved us when I lost my job at 56 and spiraled into a depression I didn't want to admit I had. And she learned me too. My quiet wasn't rejection. It was how I processed stress. My long hours weren't avoidance. They were fear of failing my family. My temper wasn't cruelty. It was pressure I didn't know how to release. When she stopped assuming the worst and started asking why, something softened between us. Marriage isn't 50-50. Some years it's 80-20. After her surgery when she was 63, I carried nearly everything. Cooked, cleaned. I drove her to appointments. I helped her down the stairs. She couldn't give much back except gratitude and trust. Other years, she carried me. When I lost my job, when I questioned my worth, when I withdrew into myself, she stood firm. She kept believing in me when I didn't believe in myself. You cannot keep score in a marriage. The moment you start counting who sacrificed more, who apologized more, who worked harder, you've already stepped away from partnership. Young couples today expect one person to fulfill every role. Best friend, therapist, financial equal, intellectual match, passionate lover, adventure companion, emotional anchor. No single human can carry that weight without breaking. Margaret wasn't everything. She didn't love the same books I did. She didn't fish. She didn't always understand my need for silence. And I didn't always understand her need for words. But she stood next to me. At graduations. At hospital beds. At funerals. At kitchen tables at midnight when bills didn't add up. She wasn't perfect. She was mine. She's been gone for 10 years now. 10 years of quiet coffee mornings. 10 years of instinctively reaching for her hand in the dark and finding only space. 10 years of hearing our song on the radio and feeling my throat close up. I don't miss a flawless woman. I miss the life we built. The inside jokes. The small arguments that ended in laughter. The way she'd look at me across a crowded room and I'd know exactly what she was thinking. Did I marry the right person? That question doesn't carry much weight anymore. I married a woman, an imperfect, evolving, beautiful, complicated woman. And for 66 years I chose her. Over pride, over ego, over temporary anger, over doubt. If you're sitting there wondering whether you married the wrong person, you probably did. We all do, because no one marries perfection. We marry potential. The real question isn't whether you made the perfect choice decades ago. The real question is, are you willing to choose that person again today? Love is not just a feeling. Feelings rise and fall like the stock market. Love is a decision you make when you're exhausted, when you're disappointed, when you're scared, when things are good, and especially when things are hard. I married Margaret at 26. I chose her for 66 years. And if I had one more lifetime, I'd marry her again. If this story made you stop and think, leave a comment and tell me what marriage means to you. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And subscribe, because some truths are better heard now, not when it's too late.